Well, that looks like a bed fit for a king tonight. When I see a grove of trees like this, just one thing comes to mind. What comes to your mind? Well, to my mind it comes perfect place for a stealth shelter. So, I'm arming myself with a saw and a pair of pruning shears. These branches are covered with thorns. So, we're going to get rid of a few of the bigger branches, like this one. Being very careful not to cut ourselves. And we need to get rid of a few of these smaller branches. So already the space is opening out. So how nice does that now look? Wow. For sleeping in. Absolutely terrific. I made the ground as flat as possible, and now I'm going to lay out a camouflage tarpaulin. Well, we are making kebabs for supper. Well, tonight I'm cooking kebabs inside this grove or thicket of trees, a fantastic stealth shelter completely hidden away. And I'll explain to you why. This is one of my favorite, absolute favorite types of stealth shelters, being in a grove of trees. But let's get this fire going. First, we've got our kebabs. We've got a whole lot of them on a piece of wire. And the leftover meat, I ran out of kebab, so I'm putting the meat in the middle there. That should work fine. What we want is a very hot, fast cook. So I've got a paintbrush and a little bit of oil. I'm going to, there's a marinade I have some marinade here, but I first want to just put some oil onto the grid so that it doesn't stick too badly. So this is just ordinary sunflower or cooking oil, just to stop it sticking. Now what we want is a fast, hot fire. I'm going to just stand this here. So what I normally do is I take a seed pod from these palm trees. This is a palm tree grove. I take some sticks. And then I take some methylated spirits. Oh dear, I see I've left out one of these kebabs. Anyway, we'll include that in a moment. I spray the seed pod with methylated spirits, and then I set it on fire. Notice there's almost no smoke. This is very dry wood. One of the beauties of being in a grove is the leaves of the tree will disperse the smoke. So I just keep spraying it till it actually takes a bit. And that looks pretty good. So you'll see that I use very dry wood, I use thin wood. There's virtually no smoke, and you can see that it's now taking, and any smoke is being dispersed. So my favorite shelter is this kind of a grove or thicket of trees, because yeah, because the trees are green, and unlike a debris shelter, they always look beautiful, and a debris shelter will begin to dry out and look different from the landscape, whereas this, you can come back in a month or a year and it'll still look like a proper hidden debris shelter. So a green debris, this is a living stealth shelter. Now my second favorite stealth shelter is to be inside a single bush. Like I did a video on the mouse hole tree. It's a tree that looks like a circle and all the branches come down to the ground, which is pretty fantastic because you can hollow, and also it allows you to hollow out the inside of the tree, and then you can sleep in that single tree. But this is just as good, which is sleeping in the midst of, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, a whole lot of trees, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or so trees in forming a little circle, which I am now able to form my stealth shelter in. So we want to create a fairly hot set of coals for our kebabs. They're going to cook quite quickly, because your meat you want it to cook reasonably quickly. What I'm going to do is just marinate everything. So I forgot one of these kebabs, so we'll just put it in here. And I've got a marinade of soy sauce, Worcestershire sauce, and apricot jam or apricot jelly. And let's marinate this. All adds to the flavor. So while this fire is getting to the correct temperature, we'll just let it all marinate a little bit. So we'll just let that stand there till our fire gets perfect. So it's doing pretty well. Now I will show you in the video how I spent about 20 minutes or so preparing this grove, and mostly I had to cut all the thorns off these branches and get rid of all the thorny branches, because I don't like thorns. I don't like them sticking into me. I've got a few into my flesh this morning, just a couple of pricks, and that was quite bad. And you know, I'm reminded of Paul, who had a thorn in his flesh, and he besought the Lord 3 times, "Oh Lord, save me from this." It's not a literal thorn in the flesh. It could be some person who was bugging him, or it could have been some health problem he had. There was something that was causing Paul, the Apostle Paul, problems, and he begged God 3 times, and God said no 3 times, and he said, "My grace is sufficient for you." In other words, you're just going to have to live with it, Paul. I will give you the ability to live with it. So God could so easily have gotten rid of that problem for Paul. I mean, Paul's a pretty big deal, because Paul was busy doing the Lord's work left, right, and center. And you would have thought, well, surely God, I mean, this guy's so busy, he's so preoccupied, but it was to keep him, Paul said, to keep him humble, because he'd seen visions and many great things. And he thought that that thorn in the flesh was from the Lord to keep him humble. Let's say that was true. But we live in a world of thorns. I mean, right from the beginning, when they were thrown out of Eden, there was talk about thorns. And I was bothered by these thorns. And last night I was bothered by mosquitoes. So we live in a world, you could say, of thorns and mosquitoes, or problems, which not only religious folks, but everybody faces. And I've got to hand it to the atheists. They manage to go through life without the additional help from God. I mean, I just take my hat off that you know, I'm so grateful for the help that God gives me. You know, as Paul said, God said his grace is sufficient. You know, I mean, I can't imagine living a life without grace. Grace, grace, grace to help you. So what I want to talk about today is, instead of us asking God to remove the thorns, the problems, the many, let's say, long-standing issues in our life, we should take note of what God said to Paul. I'll help you to overcome it. I won't remove it. I'll help you to cope with it. And I don't think that was just written for Paul. That was written for everybody. Just look how nice this fire is burning. Wow. Sure. You've got to make sure we don't set the place on fire. But just look how nice and hot those embers are. So, yeah, it's a matter of, think of the honor and the glory. Instead of having a problem removed, or avoiding the problem, or just saying, just giving up, just think of the glory. Even atheists or people who don't know God, anyone, of saying, I'll man up to the problem. Now, this is the 3rd night of the Feast of Debris Shelters. Kind of celebrates, it's also known as the Feast of Booths or the Feast of Tabernacles. It kind of celebrates the time that the Israelites came out of Egypt. And there were two types of Israelite. There was the Israelite who had no hope. That was the older generation who had rejected God, said, no, we're too scared of these Amorites and these Canaanites. We refuse to go into the promised land. And God swore in his wrath that they would not enter his rest. So they had to wander for 40 years with no hope. And then you had the younger generation who just wanted to go and kill themselves, some Amorites and some Canaanites, and let's get into this promised land. And now they had to walk for 40 years, but at least they walked with hope that one day they're going to enter the promised land, which their fathers and parents didn't have that hope. Now this is getting there. Let's keep this... let's just keep this tarpaulin away from the fire. We don't want that to catch fire. So in a sense, I'm kind of commemorating the past, and then the Feast of Tabernacles also commemorates the future, because there's going to be a mass extinction just before the millennium when Christ comes to earth. And that mass extinction is going to leave virtually all the buildings razed to the ground, and people are going to, when Christ returns, the small remnant of people are going to have to dwell in booths or temporary shelters, because there'll be virtually nothing permanent left. Oh, this is getting great. It'll take about 20 minutes to cook it, but I just want that fire to die down a little bit. So there we go. So and then the Feast of Debris Shelters has also got some relevance for today, because just as they walk with God, he was in a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of cloud by day, we, this generation, have Christ inside us, in our hearts and in our minds. We walk with him, just like the ancient Israelites did. We don't have to go to a tabernacle. We are the tabernacle. And yeah, let's just pour some liquid over that. So we wander or walk through this life as temporary citizens of God's kingdom. We haven't reached the promised land or eternal life or the kingdom yet. We have Christ inside us. So he's just like a pillar of fire and cloud that was with them. Let's just put this on. I think that's getting about right. Yum, yum. We'll just see how well it and how quickly it does. We don't want it to burn, but it's got to get done fairly quickly. So, you know, you take the generation that wandered in the wilderness and refused to go, and they looked at the size of those Amorites and people, and they said, these guys are too big for us. But just think, God had parted the Red Sea, done miracles. You have the power of the fire by night and the cloud by day. You have the manna falling. You have the Red Sea parting. You have all these miracles from God. I mean, what an honor to walk that journey and to go and fight and to know that God has got your back, that he's the one who ordered you into the fight. I mean, that's not like a human leader ordering you to fight. That's God ordering you to fight. So you know that he's got your back. And then when the younger generation went into the promised land. Look at the first city that they took, Jericho. They walked around it for 7 days, and the walls just fell down, and then they massacred the people of Jericho. So God was with them, helping it. So if the older generation had just had the faith and the hope and the right attitude, the same thing could have happened for them. But no, they were condemned to never enter into God's rest. So they had these were people without hope. They had a bad attitude, and I can imagine for 40 years they just wandered that wilderness with absolutely no decent attitude towards God, and it must have been just like a hopeless exercise for them. Whereas you could see that the generation that went into the promised land under Joshua, the Bible says that they were a great generation. They did everything that God commanded them to do. They had a terrific attitude. And they did the job of chasing out most of the inhabitants. Now, they didn't do a perfect job. There were still some inhabitants left. But I mean, what a wonderful job. And God commends that generation for the good job that they did. So under Joshua, those folks had hope. They had a terrific victory. They captured the promised land. They fulfilled the promises of God. They just were a great bunch. And God didn't remove the problem. He didn't drive out the inhabitants. They had to actually fight. And if you think about it, that is really the same thing as God told Paul. You're just going to have to man up, suck it up, buttercup. You're going to have to fight this thing. I'm not removing the problems. I'm not removing the thorns. I'm not removing the mosquitoes. You're going to have to cope with all the things that this world has to offer, all the problems, all the many challenges that it has. You're going to have to, but I will be there to help you. So we see, as I say, we see the generation that just refused to walk with God, obey, take that leap of faith and make it into and go into the promised land. And then we see the other lot who did make it into the promised land, the younger generation, and what a wonderful job they did. They were one of the best generations of Israelites that followed some of the worst. And yeah, God was with them. God didn't remove the inhabitants of the land. He could have driven them out with hornets, as he said he could do. But he let the Israelites fight their battles and win city by city and slowly possess the land. And yeah, God's grace was sufficient for them, just as it was God's grace was sufficient for Paul. So it's a walk of faith, it's a walk of grace, it's not our own strength. The Israelites didn't, I am sure, say, we're great, we can cope with these giants all on our own, we're just fantastic, we don't need God. No, they were totally dependent and totally reliant upon God. And God came through for them, just like he came through for Paul. Now, look how nicely this is doing. Wow, 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 wow. That was just the right heat. It's cooking fantastically. And a few more minutes and I reckon it's going to be virtually done. The fire is... I'm going to just throw the rest of this oil in here as well. Just a tiny little bit of jam left. So what a glory and what an honor it is to have a common enterprise, God and man, which is what every believer has got. And God's interested in everything we do. It's not just conquering a promised land, it's everything we do, the daily walk. Whenever, well, as a Christian, we have God within us. So we have instant access. We don't have to go look to heaven. We don't have to look under the earth. Then God is right inside us and with us, and in our heart and in our mouth. I just want to show you what the view looks like from within this shelter. So this is what it looks like looking upwards. So it's all totally enclosed. You can see there's virtually no smoke, and any smoke gets dispersed by those branches. This is what it looks like. There's my bed, there's my bolt hole through there, and then here is our fire. Trees everywhere. On this side there's a large palm tree. This is a whole grove of palms. So we're completely and utterly surrounded by palms. How lovely is this debris shelter? And how lovely is this food? I think we are just about done. Everything, the meat is definitely cooked, and therefore all the various vegetables should be fine as well. Let's just turn it over. You don't want the meat too overdone. And all the veggies, the pineapple, the onions, the peppers, all of them can be slightly, they just have a taste. This, I think the other side is better done, so let's give that a few more minutes. Yeah, we'll just give that side a few more minutes, and then we'll plate it up. Well, the proof is in the eating. Mushroom. Delicious. Meat. Melt in your mouth soft. Excuse the hands. That wasn't just a lucky one. Also, melt in the mouth soft. Bit of salt. Now the mushroom. Sorry, that mushroom is an onion. Also done perfectly. This meat is so delicious. It was goulash. Well, I'm not going to sit and ooh and ah over every bite. I think you can all see how much I'm suffering. It's a joke. Totally enjoying day or night number 3 of in my stealth shelter. This is a genuine stealth shelter, but on the feast of debris shelters. Well, good night all, and please join me for day 4 of the Feast of Debris Shelters. Good night then.